are on chapter 48. Ready? I am Lady Rain, and this is the Reader's Nook. We are reading The Stand, and we are on chapter 48. We are in the middle, as I am getting everything together. We're going to find out what happens to Trash Can Man today. So, we left off with the Deuce Coupe roared down the highway, and painted flames shooting up from the manifold. Trash Can Man sat in the passenger seat, a warm beer in his lap and troubled in his mind. It was almost dawn on the morning of August 5th when Trash Can Man entered Cibola, otherwise known as Vegas. Somewhere in the last 5 miles he had lost his left sneaker, and now, as he walked down the curving exit ramp, his footfalls sounded like this: slap thump, slap thump, slap thump. They sounded like the flap of a flat tire. He was almost done in, but a little wonder came back as he made his way down the strip, which was jammed with dead cars, quite a few dead people. Most of them, well picked over by the buzzards. He had made it. He was here in Cibola. Now, he had been tested and he had passed the test. He saw 100 honky-tonk nightclubs. There was signs that read liberal slots, signs that said Bluebell Wedding Chapel, and 60-second wedding, but it'll last a lifetime. He saw a silver ghost Rolls Royce halfway through a plate glass window of an adult bookstore. He saw a naked woman hanging upside down from a lamppost. He saw 2 pages of the Las Vegas Sun go rifling by. The headline that revealed itself over and over again as the paper flapped and turned was "Plague Grows Worse," underlined, Washington Mute. He saw a gigantic billboard which said Neil Diamond, the American Hotel, June 15th to August 30th. Someone had scrawled the words, "Die Las Vegas for your sins," across the show window of a jewelry store, seeming to specialize in nothing but wedding and engagement rings. He saw an overturned grand piano lying in the street with a large dead wooden horse. His eyes were full of these wonders. As he walked on, he began to see other things. They're neon dead this midsummer for the first time in years. Flamingo, the Mint, Dunes, Sahara, Glass Slipper, Imperial. But where were the people? Where was the water? Hardly knowing what he was doing, letting his feet pick their own path, Trash Can turned off the strip. His head dropped forward, his chin resting on his chest. He dozed as he walked, and when his feet tripped over the curb, when he fell forward and gave himself a bloody nose on the pavement, when he looked up and beheld what was there, he could hardly believe it. Blood ran unnoticed from his nose to his tattered blue shirt. It was as if he was still dozing, and this was his dream. Tall white buildings stretched up to the desert sky. A monolith in the desert, a needle, a monument, every bit as magnificent as the Sphinx or the Great Pyramid. The windows of its eastern face gave off the fire of the rising sun like an omen. In front of this bone-white desert edifice, flanking its entranceway, were 2 huge gold pyramids. Over the canopy was a large bronze medallion, and carved on it, in bas relief, was the snarling head of a lion. Above this, also in bronze, the simple but mighty legend, MGM Grand Hotel, MGM Grand Motel. Hotel. Boy. But what captured his eyes, I'm gonna be just fumbling tonight, I'm telling you. But what captured his eyes was what stood on the grassy quadrangle between the parking lot and the entranceway. Trash Can stared, an orgasmic shivering consuming him so fiery that for a moment he could only prop himself on his bloody hands, the unraveling end of the ace bandage trailing between them, staring at the fountain with his faded blue eyes that were halfway to being glare-blind by now. A little groaning noise began to escape him. The fountain was working. It was a gorgeous construction of stone and ivory, chased and inlaid with gold. Colored lights played over the spray, making the water purple, then yellow, orange, then red. then green. The constant ticking patter of the spray fell back into the pool. The constant ticking patter as the spray fell back into the pool was very loud. Chiabola, he muttered, and struggled to his feet. His nose was still dripping blood. He began to stagger toward the fountain. His stagger became a trot. The trot became a run. The run became a sprint. A mad dash. His scraped knees rose piston-like almost to his neck. A word began to fly out of his mouth, a long word like a paper streamer that rose to the sky, bringing people to the windows high above. And who saw him? God, perhaps, or the devil? Certainly not the trash can man. The word grew higher and shriller, longer and longer as he approached the fountain, and the word was Chiabola. The final sound drew out and out, the sound of all the pleasures that all the people who had ever lived on the earth have ever known, and it ended only when he struck the lip of the fountain, chest high, and yanked himself up and over and into the bath of incredible coolness and mercy. He could feel the pores of his body open like a million mouths and slurp the water in like a sponge. He screamed. He lowered his head, snorted in water, and blew it back out in a combined sneeze and cough that sent blood and water and snot against the side of the fountain in a splat. He lowered his head and drank like a cow. Chiabola, Chiabola, Trash cried rapturously. My life for you. He dog-paddled his way around the fountain, drank again, then climbed over the edge and fell onto the grass with an awkward thump. It had all been worth it. Everything had been worth it. Water cramps struck him, and he suddenly threw up with a loud grunt. Even throwing up felt grand. He got to his feet, and holding on to the lip of the fountain with his claw hand, he drank again. This time his belly accepted the gift gratefully. Sloshing like a filled goatskin, he staggered toward the alabaster steps which led to the doors of this fabulous place, steps that led between the golden pyramids. Halfway up the steps, a water cramp struck him and doubled him over. When it passed, he lurched gamely onward. The doors were of the revolving type, where they spin like Superman when he goes through the door. And it took all his feeble strength to get one of them in motion. He pushed through it in a plushy carpeted lobby, into a plushy carpeted lobby that seemed miles long. The rug underfoot was thick and lush and cranberry colored. I want cranberry colored carpet because it's so pretty. There was a registration desk, a mail desk, a key desk, cashier's windows, all empty. To his right, beyond an ornamental gilt railing, was the casino. Trash can man stared at it in awe. The serried ranks of slot machines like soldiers standing at parade rest. Beyond them, the roulette and craps tables, the marble railings, enclosing the baccarat tables. Who's here? Trash croaked, but no answer came back. He was afraid then, because this was the place of ghosts, a place where monsters might lurk. But the fear was weakened by his weariness. He stumbled down the steps and into the casino, passing the cub bar, where Lloyd Heinrich sat silently in the deep shadows, watching him and holding a glass of Poland water. He came to a table upholstered in green baize. The mystic legend, dealer must hit 16 and stand on 17 inscribed thereon. Trash climbed up on it and fell instantly asleep. Soon nearly half a dozen men stood around the sleeping. That was the trash can man. What do we do with him? Ken DeMont asked. Let him sleep, Lloyd answered. Flagg wants him. Yeah? Where the Christ is Flagg, anyway, another answered. Lloyd turned to look at the man, who was balding and stood a full foot taller than Lloyd. Nonetheless, he drew back a step with Lloyd's gaze. The stone around Lloyd's neck was the only one that was not solid jet. In the center gleamed a small and disquieting red flaw. Are you that anxious to see him, Hack? Lloyd asked. No, the balding man said. Hey, Lloyd, you know I didn't... Sure. Lloyd looked down at the man sleeping at the blackjack table. Flagg will be around, he said. He's been waiting for this guy. This guy is something special. On the table, oblivious of all of this, Trash Can Man slept on. Trash and the kid spent the night of July 18th. Okay, so we're going to back up a couple weeks here. Of July 18th in a motel in Golden, Colorado. The kid picked 2 rooms with a connecting door. The connecting door was locked. The kid, now well in the bag, solved this minor problem by blowing the lock off with 3 bullets from one of his .45s. The kid raised one tiny boot and kicked the door. It shuddered open in a fine blue haze of gun smoke. "Betcha fucking A," he said. "Which room?" "Take your pick, Trashy." Trash Can Man opted for the room on the right. For a while was left alone. The kid had gone out someplace. Trash Can Man was slowly considering the idea of simply fading away into the gloom before something really bad could happen, trying to balance the possibility against his lack of transportation. When the kid returned, Trash Can Man was alarmed to see that he was pushing a shopping cart which was full of 6 packs of Coors beer. The doll's eyes were now bloodshot and rimmed with red. The pompadour hairdo. Hi! Thank you. We're reading The Stand, and it's really awesome. We're actually in the middle of chapter 48. We're finding out about Trash Can Man again. It's only, I think, the second time that they've mentioned him. They don't really talk about him much, but he's got a big part to play, apparently. So that's what we're going to watch. We're going to find out. The pompadour hairdo was coming unraveled like a broken and expanding corkspring, and the greasy bunches of hair now hung down over the kid's ears and cheeks, making him look like some dangerous, albeit absurd, caveman who had found a leather jacket left by a time traveler and put it on. The rabbit's feet bobbed back and forth on the belt of his jacket. "It's warm," the kid said, "but who gives a rip? Am I right?" "Right, absolutely," Trash Can Man said. "Have a beer, asshole," the kid said, and tossed him a can. When Trash Can pulled the ring tab, he got a face full of foam, and the kid roared with oddly diminutive laughter, holding his flat belly with both hands. Trash smiled weakly. He decided that later tonight, after this small monster had succumbed to sleep, he would slip away. He had had enough. And what the kid had said about the dark priest, Trash Can Man's fears about that were so big he could not even get them to coalesce. Saying things like that, even if you were joking, was like shitting on the altar of the church or holding your face up to the sky in a thunderstorm and begging the lightning to come and hit you. I did not want to interrupt others. Thank you. That is so sweet. Oh, it's okay. I don't mind. My dogs interrupt me all the time. My kids interrupt me. Off and on, we go back and forth talking. So, thank you. I appreciate it. You're more than welcome to follow, and I read at 11 and 7s. So 11 in the morning, 7 in the evening. And I try to let people know when I'm not going to make it. Like tomorrow morning I will be reading, but hopefully tomorrow night. Thank you. Hopefully tomorrow night I'll be reading. So we're going to continue. We've got a long way to go, but a lot of adventure. The worst thing was that he didn't think the kid had been joking. Trash Can Man had no intention of going into the mountains and around all those hairpin turns like this crazy dwarf who drank all day and apparently all night, and who talked about overthrowing the dark man and putting himself in his place. Meanwhile, the kid had put away 2 beers in 2 minutes, crushed the cans, and tossed them indifferently on one of the room's twin beds. He was looking morosely at the RCA Chromacolor, a fresh Coors in his left hand, and the .45 he had used to blow open the connecting door in his right. No fucking electricity. So there ain't no fucking TV, he said. As he grew more drunk, his southern accent grew more pronounced, putting fur on his words. Don't I hate that? I love it that all the assholes got wasted, but Jesus jumped up Bald-headed old Christ. Where's HBO? Where's the goddamn wrestling matches? Where's the Playboy channel? That was a good one, Trashy. I mean, they never showed guys getting right down and eating hair pie, munching the whole bearded clam, you know what I mean? Some of those ladies had legs, went right up to their chins. You know what a motherfucker, what the motherfucker I'm talking about? Sure, Trash Can said. You're a fucking A. Don't tell me, I'll tell you. The kid stared at the dead TV. You numb cunt, he said, and shot the TV. Picture tube imploded with a great hollow bang. Glass belched out onto the carpet. Trash Can Man raised his arm to shield his eyes, and his beer gurgled out into the green nylon shag when he did. Oh, look at that, you dumb dork, the kid exclaimed. His tone was one of a great outrage. Suddenly the 45 was pointed at Trash. Its bore as big and dark as the ocean liner's smokestack. Trash felt his groin go numb. He thought he might be pissing himself, but had no way of telling for sure. I'm going to ventilate your thinking machine for that, the kid said. You don't spilt the beer. You done spilt the beer. If it is any other kind, I wouldn't do it. But that was cores you spilled. I'd piss cores if I could. You believe the happy crappy? Sure, Trash Can whispered. And do you think they're making any more cores these days, Trash? That seemed very fucking likely to you? No, Trash Can whispered. Guess not. You're fucking right. It's a dangerous species. It's a endangered species. He raised the gun slightly. Trash Can Man thought it was the end of his life. The end of his life for sure. Then the kid lowered the gun again, slightly. He had an absolutely vacant look on his face. Trash Can guessed his expression indicated deep thought. Tell you what, Trash. You get you another can, and you chug it. You can chug the whole thing. I won't send you to Cadillac Ranch. You believe that, happy crappy? What's chugging? Jesus Christ, boy, you as dumb as a stone boat. Drink the whole can without stopping. That's what chugging is. Where you been spending your time, motherfucking Africa? You want to get on that stick, Trashy? If I have to put one in you, it goes right in your eye. I got this sucker loaded up with dum-dums. Open you right the fuck up. Turn you into a fucking buffet dinner for the cockroaches in this dump. He gestured with the pistol, his red eyes fixed on Trash. There was a speckle of beer foam on his upper lip. Trash Can went to the cardboard carton, selected a beer, popped the top. Go on, never drop, and if you puke back up, you're gone fucking goose. Trash Can Man handed the can. Beer gurgled out. He swallowed convulsively, his Adam's apple going up and down like a monkey on a stick. When the can was empty, he dropped it between his feet, fought a seemingly endless battle with his gorge, and won his life back in the long, echoing belch. Trash swayed on his feet, grinning sickly. All at once, he was a lot drunk instead of a little. The kid holstered his piece. Okay, not bad, Trash Can Man. Not too motherfucking shabby. The kid continued to drink. Squash cans piled up on the motel bed. Trash held a can of Coors between his knees and sipped on it whenever. The kid seemed to be looking at him with disapproval. The kid muttered on, his voice growing ever lower and more southern as the empties piled up. He talked of places he had been, races he had won, a load of dope he had run across the border from Mexico in a laundry truck with a 442 Hemi engine under the hood. Nasty stuff, he said. All dope was nasty motherfucking stuff. He never touched it himself, but boy howdy, after you mold a few loads of that shit, you could wipe your ass with a gold toilet paper. At last he began to nod off, the little red eyes closing for a longer and longer periods, then coming reluctantly back to half-mast. Gonna get him, Trashy, Kid muttered. I'll go out there, check it out, keep kissing his motherfucking ass until I see how the land lays. Nobody orders this kid around. No fucking buddy. Not for long. I don't do piecework. If I'm on a job, I run it. That's just my style. I don't know who he is or where he comes from or how he can broadcast into our motherfucking thinking machines. But I'm gonna run him right the fuck, you John, out of town. Gotta shut him down. Gonna send him to the Cadillac Ranch. Stick with me, Crash, or whoever the fuck you are. He collapsed slowly backwards onto the bed. His can of beer, freshly opened, fell from his relaxing hand. More quarters puddled on the rug. The case was gone. By trash can's reckoning, the kid had gotten through 21 cans of it himself. That's a lot of alcohol. Trash can man couldn't understand how such a little man could drink so much beer. But he did understand what time it was. Time for him to go. He knew that. But he felt drunk and weak and ill. What he wanted more than anything was to sleep for a little while. That would be all right, wouldn't it? The kid was apt to sleep like a log all night. Maybe half of tomorrow morning, too. Plenty of time for him to take a little nap. So he went into the other room, tiptoeing in spite of the kid's comatose state, and closed the connecting door as well as he could, which wasn't very well. Force of the bullets had warped it somehow. There was a wind-up alarm clock on the dresser. Crash wound it, set it for midnight, since he didn't know and didn't care what time it really was, and then set the alarm for 5 o'clock. He lay down on one of the twin beds without even stopping to take off his sneakers. He was asleep in 5 minutes. He woke up some time later in the dark grave of the morning, with a smell of beer and puke blowing across his face in the dry little gale. Something was in bed with him. Something hot and smooth and squirmy. His first panicky thought was that a weasel had somehow gotten right out of his Nebraska dream and into reality. A whimpery little as he realized that the animal in bed with him, while not big, was too big to be a weasel. He had a headache from the beer. It drilled mercilessly at his temples. "Grab on me," the kid whispered in the dark. Trash can's hand was seized and led to something hard and cylindrical and throbbing like a piston. Ooh. "Jerk me off. Go on, jerk me off. You know what to do. I saw the first time I looked at you. Come on, you motherfucker. Jerk off. Jerk me off." Trash can knew how to do it. In many ways, it was a relief. He knew about it from the long nights in stir. They said it was bad, that it was queer. But what the queers did was better than what some of the others did. The ones who spent their nights sharpening spoon handles into shanks. The ones who just lay there on their bunks, cracking their knuckles and looking at you and grinning. The kid had put Trash Can's hand on a kind of gun he understood. He closed his hand around it and began. After it was over, the kid would fall asleep again. Then he would creep out. The kid's breath was becoming ragged. He began to bump his hips in time with Trash Can's strokes. Trash did not at first realize the kid was also unbuckling his belt and then slipping his jeans and underpants down to his knees. Trash let him. It didn't matter if the kid wanted to slip it in him. Trash had had it slipped in him before. He didn't die. It wasn't poison. Then his hand froze. Whatever was suddenly pressing against his anus, it wasn't flesh. It was cold steel. Suddenly he knew what it was. "No," he whispered. His eyes were wide and terrified in the dark. Now he could dimly see the homicidal doll's face in the mirror, hanging over his shoulder with his hair in his red eyes. "Yes," the kid whispered back. "And you don't want to lose a stroke, Trashy. Not one motherfucking stroke, or I'll just pull the trigger on this thing, blow your shit factory all to hell and gone. Dum-dums, Trashy. You believe the happy crappy?" Whining Trash Can began to stroke him again. His whines became little gasps of pain as the barrel of the .45 worked its way into him, rotating, gouging, tearing. And could it be that it was exciting him? It was. Eventually his excitement became apparent to the kid. "Like it, don't you?" the kid panted. "I knew you would. You bag of pus. You like having it up your ass, don't you? Say yes, puss bag. Say yes, or right to hell you go. Yes, trash can man whimpered. Want me to do it to you? He didn't. Excited or not, he didn't. But he knew better than to say so. Yes. I wouldn't touch your dick if it was diamonds. Do it yourself. Why you think God gave you two hands? Oh, shit, I forgot. How long did it go on? God might know. The trash can man did not. A minute, an hour, an age. What was the difference? He became sure that in the instant of the kid's orgasm, he would feel two things simultaneously. The hot jet of the small monster semen on his belly and the mushrooming agony of a dum-dum bullet roaring up through his vitals. The ultimate enema. Then the kid's hips froze and his penis went through its convulsions in Trash Can Man's hand. His fist became slick, like a rubber glove. An instant later, the pistol was withdrawn. Silent tears of relief gushed down Trash Can Man's cheeks. He was not afraid to die, at least not at the service of the dark man. But he did not want to die in this dark motel room at the hands of a psychopath. Not before he had seen Diabola. He would have prayed to God, but he knew instantly that God would not lend a sympathetic ear to those who had thrown their allegiance to the dark man. What had God ever done for the trash can man anyway? Or for Donald Merwin Elbert either, for that matter. In the breathing silence, the kid's voice rang in song, off-key, crackling, trailing down towards sleep. My buddies and me are getting real well known. Yeah, the bad guys know us and they leave us alone. That's the Beach Boys. He began to snore. Now I'll leave, the trash can man thought. But he was afraid that if he moved, he would wake the kid up. I'll leave just as soon as I'm sure he's really asleep. 5 minutes. Shouldn't take any longer than that. But no one knows how long 5 minutes is in the dark. It might be fair to say that, in the dark, 5 minutes does not exist. He waited. He rolled in and out of a doze without knowing he had dozed. Before long he had slipped down the slide of sleep. He was on the dark road that was very high. The stars seemed close enough to reach up and touch. It seemed you could just pick one of them off the sky and pop them into a jar, like fireflies. It was bitterly cold. It was dark, dimly frosted with sunshine. He could see the living rock faces through which his highway had been cut. And in the darkness, something was walking toward him. Then his voice, coming from nowhere, coming from everywhere. In the mountains I'll give you a sign. I'll show you my power. I'll show you what happens to those who would set themselves against me. Wait. Watch. Bright eyes began to open in the dark, as if someone had set out 3 dozen danger lamps with hoods on them, and now that someone was pulling the hoods off in pairs. There were eyes, and they surrounded the trash can man in a fey ring. At least he thought they were the eyes of weasels. But as the ring tightened around him, he saw they were great gray mountain wolves, their ears cocked forward, foam dripping from their dark muzzle. He was afraid. They're not for you, my good and faithful servant. See? And they were gone, just like that. Panting gray timber wolves were gone. Watch, the voice said. Wait, the voice said. Oops, check something. Trying to check something. Okay. The dream ended. He woke to discover bright sunshine falling in through the motel room window. The kid was standing in front of it, seeming none the worse for wear from his bout with the now defunct Adolf Coors Company the night before. His hair was combed into its former shining swirls and eddies, and he was admiring his reflection in the glass. He had slipped his leather jacket over the back of the chair. The rabbits' feet dangled from the belt like tiny corpses from a gibbet. Grease your hand again to wake you up. Come on. We got us a big day ahead. A lot of stuff gonna happen today, am I right? Sure are, Trash Can Man replied with a queer smile. When the Trash Can Man swam out of sleep in the evening of August 5th, we must be back. We're back at the hotel. We're going back and forth. He was still lying on the blackjack table in the casino of the MGM Grand Hotel. Sitting backward on a chair in front of him was a young man with lank, straw blonde hair and mirror glass sunglasses. The first thing Trash noticed was the stone that hung around his neck, in the V of his open sport shirt, black, with a red flaw in the center, like the eye of the wolf in the night. He tried to say he was thirsty and managed only a weak gah sound. You sure did spend some time in the hot sun, I guess, Lloyd Henrid said. Are you him? Trash whispered. Are you the big guy? No, I'm not him. Flagg's in L.A. He knows you're here, though. I talked to him on the radio this afternoon. Is he coming? What, just to see you? Hell no. He'll be here in his own good time. You and me, Guy, we're just little people. He'll be here in his own good time. And he reiterated the question he had asked the tall man that morning, not long after Trash Can Man had stumbled in. Are you that anxious to see him? Yes? No? I don't know. Well, whichever way it turns out to be, you'll get your chance. Thirsty? Sure, here. He handed over a large thermos filled with cherry Kool-Aid. Trash Can drained it in a draught, then leaned over, holding his belly and groaning. When the cramp had passed, he looked at Lloyd with dumb gratitude. Think you could eat something? Lloyd asked. Yes, I think so. Lloyd turned to the man standing behind him. The man was idly whirling a roulette wheel, then letting the little white balls bounce and rattle. Roger, go tell Whitney or Stephanie Ann to rustle this man up some fries and a couple of hamburgers. Nah, shit, what am I thinking about? He'll Ralph all over the place. Soup. Get him some soup. That okay, man? Anything, Trash said gratefully. We got a guy here, Lloyd said. Name of Whitney Horgan. Used to be a butcher. He's a fat, loud sack of shit, but don't that man know how to cook? Jesus. And they got everything here. Genies are still running when we moved in, and the freezer's full. Fucking Vegas. Ain't it the goddamnedest place you ever saw? Yeah, Trashcan said. He liked Lloyd already, and he didn't even know his name. It's Chiabola. Say what? Chiabola. Searched for by many. Yeah, been plenty of people searching for it over the years, but most of 'em go away sort of sorry they found it. Well, you call it whatever you want, buddy. Looks like you almost cooked yourself getting here. What's your name? Trash Can Man. Lloyd didn't seem to think this was a strange name at all. Name like that? I bet you used to be a biker. He stuck out a hand. The tips of his fingers still bore fading marks of his stay in the Phoenix jail, where he'd almost died of starvation. I'm Lloyd Henrid. Pleased to meet you, Trash. Welcome aboard the good ship Lollipop. Trash Can Man shook the offered hand, and had to struggle to keep from weeping it with gratitude. So far as he could remember, this was the first time in his life someone had offered to shake his hand. He was here. He had been accepted. At long last, he was on the inside of something. He would have walked through twice as much desert as he had for this moment. Would have burned the other arm, both legs as well. Thanks, he muttered. Thanks, Mr. Henrid. Shit, brother, if you don't call me Lloyd, we'll have to throw that soup out. Lloyd, then. Thanks, Lloyd. That's better. After you eat, I'll take you upstairs and put you in a room of your own. We'll get you doing something tomorrow. The big guy's got something of his own for you, I think. But until then, there's plenty for you to do. We'll get some of the place running again, but nowhere near all of it. There's a crew up at Boulder Dam trying to get all the power back on. There's another one working on water supplies. We've got scout parties out. We've been pulling in 6 or 8 people a day. But we'll keep you off that detail for a while. Looks like you've had enough sun to last you a month. I guess I have, Trash Can Man said, with a weak smile. He was already willing to lay down his life for Lloyd Henrid. Gathering up all his courage, he pointed to the stone that lay in the hollow of Lloyd's throat. Yeah, us guys who are sort of in charge, all wear 'em. His idea. It's jet. Not really a rock at all, you know. It's like an oil bubble. I mean, the red light, the eye. Looks like that to you too, huh? It's a flaw. Special from him. I'm not the smartest guy he's got. Not even the smartest guy in the old Lost Wages. Not by a long shot, but shit. I guess you'd say I'm his mascot. He looked closely at Trash. Maybe you too. Who knows? Not me, that's for sure. He's a closed one, Flagg is. Anyway, we heard about you special, me and Whitney. That's not the regular drill at all. Too many come in to take special notice of many. He paused. Although, I guess he could, if he wanted to. I guess he could take notice of just about anybody. Trash Can Man nodded. He can do magic, Lloyd said, his voice becoming slightly hoarse. I've seen it. I hate to be the people against him, you know. Yes, Trash Can said. I saw what happened to the kid. What kid? The guy I was with until we got into the mountains. He shuddered. I don't want to talk about it. Okay, man. Here comes your soup. And Whitney, put a burger on the side after all. You'll love it. The guy makes great burgers. But try not to puke, okay? Okay. Me, I got places to go and people to see. If my old buddy Poke could see me now, he'd never believe it. I'm busier than a one-legged man in an ass-kicking contest. Catch you later. Sure, Trash Can said, and then added, almost timidly, Thanks. Thanks for everything. Don't thank me. Thank him, Lloyd said amiably. I do, Trash Can Man said. Every night. But he was talking about him to himself. Lloyd was already halfway down the lobby, looking at the man who had brought the soup and the hamburger. Trash Can Man watched them fondly until they were out of sight, and then began to chow down, eating ravenously until almost everything was gone. He would have been fine if he hadn't looked down into the soup bowl. It was tomato soup. It was the color of blood. He pushed the bowl aside, his appetite suddenly gone. It was all very well for him to tell Lloyd Henrid he didn't want to talk about the kid. It was quite another thing to stop thinking about what had happened to him. He walked over to the roulette wheel, sipping on at the glass of milk that had come with his food. He gave the wheel an idle twist and dropped a little white marble into the dish. It rolled around the room, and then hit the slots between and began to rack it back and forth. Thought about the kid. He wondered if someone would come and show him which room was his. He thought about the kid. He wondered if the ball would fetch up on the red number or the black one. But mostly he thought about the kid. The bouncing, jittering ball caught in one of the slots. It's time for good. The wheel came to a stop. The ball was sitting under the green 00 house spin. Now we got quite a bit of ways to go, I think. Oh yeah, we still got all this we're going to read. On the cloudless 80-degree day, when he was headed west from Golden directly into the Rockies along Interstate 70, the kid had given up Coors in favor of a bottle of Rebel Yell whiskey. 2 more bottles sat between the two of them on the drive shaft hump, each nearly packed into an empty cardboard milk carton so the bottles wouldn't roll around and break. The kid could nip at the bottle, chase the nip with a swallow of Pepsi Cola, and then holler hot damn or Yahoo or sex machine at the top of his lungs. He remarked several times that he would piss Rebel Yell if he could. He asked Trash Can Man if he believed that happy crappy. Trash Can Man, pale with fright and still hungover from his 3 beers of the night before, said he did. Even the kid couldn't stampede along at 90 on these roads. He lowered his speed to 60 and muttered about the goddamn fucking mountains under his breath. Then he brightened. When we get over in Utah and Nevada, we'll make up plenty of lost time, Trashy. This little darlin' do 160 on the flat. Believe the happy crappy? Sure is a nice car, Trash Can said with a sick doggy smile. Bet your ass. He ripped Rebel Yell, chased it with a Pepsi, yelled Yahoo! At the top of his lungs. Trash stared morbidly out at the passing scenery, which was now washed with mid-morning sunshine. The interstate had been blasted right into the shoulder of the mountain, and at times they were traveling between huge cliffs of rock, the cliffs he had seen in his dreams of the night before, after dark. Would those red eyes open again? He shuddered. A short while later, he became aware that their speed had dropped from 60 to 40, then to 30. The kid was swearing monotonously and horribly under his breath. The Deuce Coupe wove in and out of steadily thickening traffic, all of it stalled and deadly silent. What the fuck is this? The kid raged. Why did they all decide to die at 10,000? Fuck out of my way. Trash Can Man cringed. They rounded a curve and faced a horrendous 4-car pileup which blocked the westbound lanes of I-70 completely. A dead man covered with blood, which had dried to an uneven crack glaze long since lay, spread-eagled, face down in the road. Near him was a broken Chatty Cathy doll. Anyway, around the jam on the left was blocked by steel guardrail, posts 6 feet high. On the right, the land fell away into cloudy distance. The kid gulped Rebel Yell and swung the Deuce Coupe toward the drop-off. Hang on, Trashy, he whispered. We're going around. There's no room, Trash Can Man rasped. His throat felt like the side of a steel file. Sorry, my daughter just got back. Yeah, just enough, the kid whispered. His eyes were glittering. He began to edge the car off the road. The right-hand wheels were now hissing in the dirt of the shoulder. Count me out, Trash Can Man hurriedly and grabbed for the door handle. You sit, said the kid, or you're gonna be one dead puss bag. Trash turned his head and looked at the bore of the 45. The kid giggled tensely. Trash Can Man sat back. He wanted to close his eyes but could not. On his side of the car, the last 6 inches of shoulder dropped from view. Now he was looking straight down at the long vista of blue-gray pines and huge tumbled boulders. She wants attention. Oh, now she figured out the door's open. No, I don't think so. My youngest, she just got back. Well, thank you. You have a good night. Come back anytime. I'm glad to have y'all. It's really nice. Trash Can Man sat back. He wanted to close his eyes but could not. On his side of the car, the last 6 inches of the shoulder dropped from view. Now he was looking straight down at the long vista of blue-gray pines and huge tumbled boulders. He could imagine the Deuce Coupe's wide oval tires, now 4 inches from the edge, now 2. Another inch, the kid crooned, his eyes huge, his grin enormous. Sweat stood out on that pale doll's forehead in perfect, clear drops. Just one more. It ended in a hurry. Trash Can Man felt the right rear of the car slip suddenly outward, sharply downward. He heard a falling mill race. First the pebbles, then the large stones. He screamed. The kid cursed horribly. Changed down to first gear and floored the accelerator. From the left, where they had been inching by the overturned corpse of the VW microbus, came a squall of grinding metal. Fly, the kid screamed. Just like a badass bird. Fly, goddammit, fly. The Deuce Coupe's rear wheels spun. For a moment, their shift toward the drop seemed to be increasing. What is she doing? Playing back and forth? Oh, stop spraying her with that, you meanie. Then the car jerked forward, lurched up. They were back on the road. on the far side of the pileup, laying rubber. Hey, can you get the boys down here to help? We're going to do the table. Told you I want to clean up the table for tomorrow. Oh, well, then we'll wait till he's done. Well, we're going to wait until I'm done reading anyway. Bye. Grandmother could not read. Your stream was amazing. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate it. You are so kind. I can't get this to work. You are very kind. Thank you. Yeah, I love to read, and I decided to start sharing it. So we've read a lot. But you have a good night. Bye. All right, where are we at? I told you she'd do it. The kids screamed triumphantly. God damn, did we do it? Did we do it, Trashy, you fucking chicken shit suckhole? We did it, Trash Can Man said quietly. He was twitching all over, couldn't seem to control it, and then, the second time since meeting the kid, he unwittingly said the one thing that could have saved his life, had he not said it. The kid surely would have killed him. It would have been his queer way of celebrating good driving, chump, he said. He had never called anyone champ. Oh, good driving champ. In his whole life before now. Ah, not that great, the kid said patronizingly. There's at least 2 other guys in the country could have done it. You believe that happy crappy? You say so, kid. Don't tell me, sweetheart. I'll fucking tell you. Well, on we go. All in a day's work. But they did not go on for long. The kid's deuce coupe was stopped for a good 15 minutes later. 1,800 miles or more from its point of origin in Shreveport, Louisiana. I don't believe it, the kid said. I don't motherfucking believe it. He threw open the driver's side door and jumped out. A quarter-full bottle of Rebel Yell still clenched in his left hand. Get out of my road, the kid roared, dancing about in his grotesquely high-heeled boots. Tiny natural force of destruction, like an earthquake in a bottle. Get out of my road, motherfuckers, you're dead. Y'all belong in the motherfucking boneyard. You got no business in my fucking road. Threw the Rebel Yell bottle, and it flew end over end, spraying amber droplets. It crashed into 100 pieces against the side of an old Porsche. The kid stood silent, panting and reeling a little on his feet. The problem was nothing so simple as a 4-car pileup this time. This time the problem was nothing but traffic. The eastbound lanes here were divided from the westbound by a grassy median strip, about 10 yards across. The deuce coupe probably could have made it. Hey, stop that, Phoebe. As long as they can go out, let them out. The deuce coupe probably could have made it from one side of the highway to the other, but the condition of both arteries was the same. The 4 lanes were crowded, 6 lanes of traffic. 4 lanes were crowded with 6 lanes of traffic, bumper to bumper and side to side. The breakdown lanes were as full as the travel lanes. Some drivers had even attempted to use the median itself. Although it was rough and ungraded, full of rocks, which punched out of the thin gray soil like dragon's teeth, perhaps there had been high-hung 4-wheel drive vehicles which had had some success there, but what Trash Can saw on the medium strip was an automobile graveyard of crash, bashed and smashed Detroit rolling iron. It was as if a mass madness had infected all the drivers, and they had decided to hold an apocalyptic demolition derby or lunatic gymkhana. We're high up. Why is there only 6 of 6 of what? I don't know. Did 3 of them fall? I really don't know. I haven't touched them. Okay. Gymkhana, high up on I-70. Colorado, Rocky Mountain High, Trash Can Man thought. I've seen it raining Chevys in the sky. He almost giggled and hurriedly covered his mouth. If the kid heard him giggling now, he would most likely never giggle again. The kid came striding back in his high-heeled boots, his carefully coiffed hair gleaming. His face was that of the dwarf basilisk. His eyes were bulging with fury. "I'm not leaving my fucking car," he said. "You hear me? No way. I'm not leaving it. You get walking, Trashy. You walk up there and see how far this motherfucking traffic goes. Maybe it's a truck in the road. I don't know. I know we can't fucking backtrack. We lost the shoulder. We'd go all the way down. But if it's just a stalled truck or something, I don't give a rat's ass. I'll jump those sons of whores one at a time and run 'em right the fuck over the edge. I can do it. And you better believe that, happy crappy. Get moving, son." Trash didn't argue. He began to walk carefully up the road, weaving in and out between the packed cars. He was ready to duck and run if the kid started shooting. The kid didn't, and Trash Can had walked what he judged to be a safe distance, out of pistol range. He climbed atop a tanker truck and looked back. The kid, miniature street punk from hell, truly doll-sized at this half-a-mile distance, was leaning against the side of his doocy, having a drink. Trash Can Man thought of waving and then decided it might be a bad idea. The Trash Can Man started his walk that day at about 10:30 in the morning, Mountain Daylight Time, MDT. Walking was slow. He often had to scramble over the hoods and roofs of cars and trucks. They were so tightly packed together. By the time he got to the first tunnel closed sign, it was already 3:15 in the afternoon. He had made about 12 miles. 12 miles wasn't so much, not to someone who'd crossed 20% of the country on a bicycle. But considering the obstacles, he thought 20 miles was pretty awesome. Or 12 miles was pretty awesome. He could have gone back long ago to tell the kid it was impossible. If he'd ever had any intentions of going back. He didn't, of course. Trash Can Man had never read much history. After the electroshock therapy, reading had gotten sort of tough for him. But he didn't need to know that. Times of old, kings and emperors had often killed the bearers of bad news out of simple pique. What he did know was enough. He had seen enough of the kid to know he didn't ever want to see any more. He was pondering the sign, black letters on the orange diamond shaped field. It had been knocked over and was laying beneath one wheel of what looked like the world's oldest Yugo. Tunnel closed. What tunnel? He peered around, shading his eyes, and thought he could see something. He walked on another 300 yards, scrambling over cars when he had to. Came to an alarming confusion of crashed vehicles and dead bodies. Some of the cars, trucks had been burned to the axles. Many were army vehicles. Many of the bodies were dressed in khaki. Beyond the scene of this battle, Josh was pretty sure that's what it had been. The traffic jam began again. And beyond it, east and west, the traffic disappeared into the twin bores of what a huge sign bolted to the living rock proclaimed to be the Eisenhower Tower, or Eisenhower Tunnel. I gotta itch my back. I got this itch and it's driving me nuts. Okay, that's better. Whew, that feels a lot better. He walked closer, heart bumping, not knowing just what he intended. Those two boars punching their way into the rock intimidated him, and he drew closer. As he drew closer, intimidation became outright terror. He would have understood Larry Underwood's feelings about the Lincoln Tunnel perfectly. In that instant, they were no unknowing soul brothers, shared soul emotion, one of stark fear. The main difference was that, while the Lincoln Tunnel's pedestrian catwalk was set high off the roadbed, here it was low enough that some of the cars had actually attempted to run along the side, with one pair of wheels on the catwalk and the other on the road. The tunnel was 2 miles long. The only way to negotiate it would be to crawl along from car to car in the pitch dark. It would take hours. Trash Can Man felt his bowels turn to water. He stood looking at the tunnel for a long time. Larry Underwood, over a month before, had gone into this tunnel in spite of his fear. After a long contemplation, Trash Can Man turned away and began to walk back toward the kid. His shoulders slumped, the corners of his mouth trembling. It was not just the absence of any easy place to walk which made him turn back, but the length of the tunnel. Trash, who had lived his whole life in Indiana, had no idea how long the Eisenhower Tunnel was. Larry Underwood had been moved, or perhaps controlled, by an underlying streak of self-interest. By the simple logic of survival, New York was an island, and he had to get off. The tunnel was the quickest way, so he would walk through as quick as he could. He would do it in a way you held your nose, swallowed fast, when you knew the medicine was going to taste bad. Trash Can Man was a beaten thing, used to accepting nature, and doing so with a bowed head. He had been further unmanned, brainwashed almost, by his cataclysmic encounter with the kid. He had been whooshed along at speeds high enough to induce brain damage. He had been threatened with extinction if he could not drink a whole can of beer without stopping, and without throwing up afterward. He had been sodomized with a pistol barrel. He had been nearly dumped 1,000 feet straight down from the edge of the turnpike. On top of this, could he summon enough courage to crawl through a hole bored straight through the base of a mountain? A hole where he might encounter who knew what horrors in the dark. He could not. Others maybe, but not the Trash Can Man. And there was also a certain logic in the idea of turning back. It was the logic of the beaten and half-mad true, but it still had its own perverse charm. He was not on an island. If he had to backtrack the rest of today and all day tomorrow in order to find a road that went over the mountains instead of through them, he would do it. He'd have to get by the kid. It was true, but he thought the kid might have changed his mind and left already, in spite of his declarations to the contrary. He might be dead drunk. He might even, although Trash really doubted that such extraordinarily good luck would ever come his way, be simply dead. At the worst, the kid was still there, watching and waiting. Trash could wait until dark and then creep past him like a weasel, some small animal in the underbrush. Then he would just continue on to the east until he found the road he was looking for. He arrived back at the tanker truck, from whose top he had last seen the kid and the kid's mythic deuce coupe, making better time on the return trip. This time he did not climb on to where he could be clearly silhouetted against the evening sky, but began to crawl from car to car on his hands and knees, trying to be very quiet. The kid might be alert and on watch. With a guy like the kid, you just couldn't tell, and it didn't pay to take chances. He found himself wishing he had taken one of the soldiers' guns in his life. As he kept crawling, the road pebbles biting painfully into his claw hands, it was 8 o'clock, and the sun had gone behind the mountains. Trash Can stopped behind the hood of the Porsche the kid had thrown his liquor bottle at, and carefully raised his eyes over it. Yes, there was the kid's deuce coupe, with its flamboyant flake gold paint, its convex windshield, and the shark fin cutting at the bruise-color evening sky. The kid was slumped behind the day-glow steering wheel, his eyes closed, his mouth open. Trash Can Man's heart thundered a percussive victory song in his chest. Dead drunk, his heartbeat proclaimed in syllables of two. Dead drunk, by God, dead drunk. Trash thought he could be 20 miles east of here before the kid even woke up to his hangover. Still, he was careful. He skittered from car to car like a water bug crossing the still surface of the pond, skirting the deuce coupe on his left, hurrying across the increasing gaps. Now the deucey was at 9 o'clock on his left, Now 7. Now 6. Directly behind him. Now he put distance between him and that crazy, "You prick, stupid cocksucker, you hold still." Trash froze on his hands and knees. He made wee-wee in his pants, and his mind dissolved into a madly fluttering black bird of panic. He turned around little by little, the tendons in his neck creaking like the hinges of a door in a haunted house. And there stood the kid, resplendent in an iridescent shirt of green and gold and a pair of sun-faded cords. There was a .45 in each hand and a horrible grimace of hate and rage in his face. "I was just checking down this way," the trash can man heard himself saying, "to make sure the coast was clear." "Sure, on your hands and knees you were checking, dinkweed. I'll clear your motherfucking coast. Stand up here." Trash can somehow gained his feet and kept them by holding on to the door handle of the car on his right. Twin bores of the kid's matched set of .45s looked every bit as big as the twin bores of the Eisenhower tunnel. He was looking at death now. He knew that. There was no words to avert it at this time. He offered up a silent prayer to the dark man. "Please, if it be your will, my life for you." "What's up there?" the kid asked. "A wreck? Tunnel? It's jammed solid. That's why I came back to tell you. Please." "Tunnel?" the kid groaned. "Jesus, Harry, old bald-headed Christ," the scowl returned. "Are you lying to me, you fucking fairy?" "No, I swear I'm not. The sign said Eisenhower Tunnel. I think that's what it said. But I had trouble with long words. Shut your dove hole. How far?" 8 miles, maybe even more." The kid was silent for a moment, looking west along the turnpike. Then he fixed Trash Can Man with a glittery gaze. "You trying to tell me the traffic jam's 8 miles long? You lying sack of shit." The kid thumbed the triggers on both guns up to half-cock. Trash Can, who wouldn't have known half-cock from full cock from a bag of frogs, screeched like a woman, put his hands over his ears. "No kidding," he screamed. "No kidding, I swear, I swear." The kid looked at him for a long time. At last he lowered the hammers on his guns. "I'm gonna kill you, Trashy," he said, smiling. "I'm gonna take your motherfucking life. But first, we're gonna walk back to that pile we squeaked by this morning. You're gonna push the van over the edge. Then I'm gonna go back and find another way around. Not gonna leave my fucking car," he said petulantly. "No how, no way. Please don't kill me," Trash Can whispered. "Please don't. If you can get the VW van over the side in less than 15 minutes, maybe I won't," the kid said. "You believe that happy crappy?" "Yes," Trash said. But he had gotten a good look into this preternatural glittering eyes, into those, and he did not believe it at all. They walked back to the pile-up, Trash Can Man walking in front of the kid on wobbling rubber legs. The kid walked mincingly, his leather jacket creaking softly in its secret folds. There was a vague, almost sweet smile on his doll-like lips. By the time they got to the pile-up, dusk was almost gone. The VW minibus was on its side. The corpses of the 3 or 4 occupants and a tangle of arms and legs that was mercifully hard to see in the fast-failing light. The kid walked past the van and stood on the shoulder, looking at the place they had edged by some 10 hours before. One of the Ducey's tire tracks was still there, but the other was crumbled away with the embankment. "Nope," the kid said with finality. "Never make it by here again, unless we do some moving and grooving first. Don't tell me, I'll tell you." For one brief moment, Trash Can Man entertained the notion of rushing at the kid and trying to push him over the edge. Then the kid turned around. His guns were drawn and pointing casually at Trash Can's midriff. "Say, Trashy, you thinking evil thoughts? Don't try to tell me no different. I can read you like a motherfucking book." Trash Can shook his head violently back and forth in protest. "Don't you make a mistake with me, Trashy. That's the one thing in this wide world you'd never want to do." Now get pushing on that van. You got 15 minutes. There was an Austin Park nearby on the broken center. Oh, I see what they hit my garbage can. Nearby on the broken center line. The kid pulled open the passenger door, casually ripped out the bloated corpse of a teenage girl. Her arm came off in his hand and he tossed it aside with the absent air of a man who had finished with the turkey drumstick he was now nibbling on, and sat down in the bucket seat with his feet out on the pavement. Hey, Phoebe! That's enough, I'm reading, you meanie. He gestured good-humoredly with his guns at the slumped, shuddering form of the trash can man. Time's a-wastin', good buddy. He threw back his head and sang, oh, here comes Johnny with his pecker in his hand. He's a one-ball man, and he's off to do the rodeo. That's right, Trashy, you fucking wet end. Get you back into it. Only 12 minutes left. I'll amend left, and I'll amend right. Come on, you fucking dummy. Get your right foot right. Trash leaned against the microbus. Bunched his legs and pushed. Microbus moved, perhaps 2 inches, toward the drop. In his heart, hope, that indestructible weed of the human heart, had begun to bloom again. The kid was irrational. No. Why? Sure. Yeah. Grab a toilet paper. What? We should have a whole thing of it. Where? Ask your sister. The kid was irrational, impulsive, but Carla Yates and his... There's some over here. Just come grab this. There we go. What Carly Yates and his pool hall buddies would have called crazier than shithouse rat. Maybe if he actually got the van over the side and cleared the way for the kid's precious scoop, the lunatic would let him live. Maybe. He lowered his head, gripped the edge of the VW's frame, and shoved with all his might. Pain flared in his recently burned arm, and he knew that the fragile new tissue would soon rip open. Then the pain became agony. The bus moved 3 inches. Sweat dropped from Trash Can's brow, ran into his eyes, stinging like warm engine oil. Oh, here comes Johnny with his pecker in his hand. He's one-ball man and he's off to the rodeo, kid sang. Well, Alleman left and Alleman right. The song broke off like a brittle twig. Trash Can looked up apprehensively. The kid had come out of the Austin's passenger seat. He was standing in profile to Trash, staring across their half of the turnpike toward the eastbound lanes. A rocky, brushy slope rose behind them, blotting out half the sky. What the fuck is that? The kid whispered. I don't hear anything. Then he did hear something. He heard a small rattle of pebbles and stones on the other side of the highway. His dream recurred to him in sudden, total recall that froze his blood and evaporated all the spit in his mouth. Who's there? The kid shouted. You better answer me. Answer, goddammit, or I'm going to start shooting. Or I start shooting. But he was answered, but not by any human voice. A howl rose up in the night like a hoarse siren, first climbing and then dropping rapidly down to a guttural growl. Holy Jesus. That's like the greatest movie ever made, and I'm totally saying that. What ironic. Totally. What? Are you talking about the movie? Belle? Did you talk about the movie? Is that what he's talking about? You've watched it? Oh, well, he's like, well, no, you ruined it. I don't get it. Anyway. What does that mean? The movie or the remote? Oh, yeah. Holy Jesus, the kid said, and his voice was suddenly thin. Counting Oh, if you have an account, you have it on all of them. All you got to do is sign into Xbox. I want to see if my Pyro works. Okay. Good. Coming down the slope on the far side of the turnpike and crossing the median strip were wolves. Gaunt, gray timber wolves. Their eyes red, their jaws gaping in a drip. There were more than 24 of them. Trash can in an ecstasy of terror made wee-wee in his pants again. The kid stepped around the trunk of the Austin, leveled his .45s and began firing. Flame licked from the barrels. The sound of the shots echoed and re-echoed from the mountain faces, making it sound as if artillery were at work. Trash can man cried out, and poked his index fingers into his ears. The night breeze tattered the gun smoke, fresh and ripe and hot, and its cordite aroma stung his nose. This is what it looks like. This is him surrounded by the wolves. Okay. That's the kid. All right. The wolves came on, no faster, no slower, at a fast walk. Their eyes. Trash can man found himself unable to look away from their eyes. They were not the eyes of ordinary wolves. Of that he was quite convinced. They were the eyes of their master, he thought. Their master and his master. Suddenly he remembered his prayer, and he was afraid no longer. He took his fingers out of his ears. He ignored the wetness spreading at his crotch. He began to smile. The kid had emptied both of his guns, dropping 3 of the wolves in doing so. He holstered the .45s without making an attempt to reload and turned west. He went about 10 paces and then stopped. More wolves were padding down the westbound lanes, weaving in and out of the dark hulks, the stalled cars, like tattered streamers of mist. One of them raised its snout to the sky and howled. Its cry was joined by a second, the second by a third, the third by a whole chorus. Then they came on again. The kid began to back up. He was trying to load one of his guns now. But the shells, were spilling out between his nervous fingers. Suddenly he gave up. The gun fell out of his hand and clunked on the road. As if it had been a single, the wolves rushed him. With a high, reedy scream of fear, the kid turned and ran for the Austin. And as he ran, his second pistol tumbled from his low holster and bounced off the road. With a low, ripping growl, the wolf closest to him sprang just as the kid dove into the Austin and slammed the door. He just made it. The wolves bounced off the door, growling, its red eyes rolling horribly. It was joined by others, and in moments the Austin was ringed with wolves. From inside, the kid's face was a small white moon looking out. Then one of the wolves was coming toward the trash can man, his triangular head held low, its eyes glowing like storm lamps. My life for you. Steadily, now not in the least afraid, Trash went to meet it. He held out his burned hand and the wolf licked it. After a moment, it sat at his feet, curled its ragged, brushy tail about its withers. No. All it does, I have it turned off for reasons related to incidents that have happened before, so it can't be used. So, at least it shouldn't be able to. But yeah, there's just no reason to use it here, that's all. But nice to meet you. We're going to find out what happens to the kid. After a moment, it sat at his Yeah, I can turn it on or turn it off. I can turn it on to allow people to use it, and I can turn it off so that nobody can use it. Yeah. After a moment, it sat at his feet, curling its ragged, brushy tail about its withers. The kid was staring at him, his mouth hanging open. Smiling into his eyes, Trash Can gave him the finger. Both fingers, and he screamed, "Fuck you! You're shut down! Do you hear me? Do you believe the happy crappy shut down? Don't you tell me, I'll tell you." The wolf's mouth closed gently on Trash Can's good hand. He looked down. It was standing again, tugging him lightly, tugging him west. "All right," Trash Can said serenely. "Okay, boy." He began to walk, and the wolf fell in right behind him, walking like a well-trained dog at heel. And as they walked away, 5 others joined them from amid the stalled cars. Now he walked with 1 wolf ahead of him, 1 behind him, 2 at each side, like an escorted dignitary. He paused once and looked back over his shoulder. He never forgot what he saw. A ring of wolves sitting patiently in a gray circle around the little Austin, and the pale circle of the kid's face staring out, his mouth working behind the window glass. The wolves seemed to grin up at the kid, their tongues lolling out of their mouths. They seemed to be asking him just how long it would be before he kicked the dark man out of old lost wages on his ass. Just how long? Trash Can Man wondered how long those wolves would sit around the little Austin, ringing in circles of teeth. The answer, of course, was as long as it took. 2 days, 3, maybe even 4. The kid would sit there looking out. Nothing to eat, unless the teenage girl had had a passenger that was. Nothing to drink. The afternoon temperature in the car's small interior, maybe as high as 130 degrees. What with the greenhouse effect? The dark man's lapdogs would wait until the kid starved to death, or until he got crazy enough to open the door and try to make a run for it. Trash Can Man giggled in the darkness. The kid wasn't very big. He didn't make much more than a mouthful for each of them, and what they did get might well poison them. "Am I right?" he cried and cackled up at the bright stars. "Don't tell me if you believe that happy crappy. I'll motherfucking tell you," he cried. His gray, ghostly companions padded gravely along along all about him, taking no notice of the Trash Can Man's shouts. When they reached the kid's deuce coupe, the wolves at his heel padded over to it, sniffed at one of the wide ovals, and then, grinning sardonically, lifted its leg and made wee-wee on it. So they took him away and then brought him back. Weird. Trash Can Man had to laugh. He laughed until tears squirted from his eyes and ran down his cracked, stubbed cheeks. His madness, like a fine skillet dish, now wanted only for the desert sun to simmer it and complete it, to give it that final subtle touch of flavor. They walked, the Trash Can grew thicker. Ah, okay, I see. To give it that final subtle touch of flavor. They walked, the Trash Can Man and his escorts. As the traffic grew thicker, the wolves either squirmed under cars with their bellies dragging on the road, or padded over hoods and roofs near him. Sanguine, silent companions with red eyes and bright teeth. When, sometime after midnight, they reached the Eisenhower Tower, Trash Can did not hesitate, but walked his way steadily into the maw of the westbound side. How could he be afraid now? How could he be afraid with guardians like these? It's a long trip, but he had not lost all track of time. Oh, it was a long trip, and he had lost all track of time before it had little more than begun. He groped blindly forward from one car to the next, Once his hand plunged into something wet and sticky and soft, and there was a horrible whoosh of stinking gas. Even then, he did not falter. From time to time, he saw red eyes in the dark, always up ahead, always leading him forward. A time later, he sensed a now freshness in the air and began to hurry, once losing his balance and plunging from the hood of one car to crack his skull painfully on the bumper of the next. A short time after that, he looked up and saw the stars again, now paling before the onset of dawn. He was out. His guardians had faded away. The trash can fell to his knees and gave thanks in a long, rambling, disjointed prayer. He had seen the hand of the dark man at work, and he had seen it plain. In spite of all he had been through since he had wakened the previous morning to see the kid admiring his hairdo in the mirror of the Gold Motel room, Trash was too excited to sleep. He walked instead, putting the tunnel behind him. The traffic was choked on the westbound side of the tunnel, too, but it had cleared out enough to walk comfortably before he had gone 2 miles. Across the median, in the eastbound lanes, a stream of cars that had been waiting to use the tunnel stretched on and on. At noon, he began to come down the Vale Pass into Vale itself, passing the condominiums and the singles apartment complexes. Now, weariness had almost overcome him. He broke a window, unlocked a door, found a bed, and that was all he remembered until the early the next morning. The beauty of religious mania is that it has the power to explain everything. Once God or Satan is accepted as the first cause of everything which happens in the mortal world, nothing is left to chance or change. Once such incantatory phrases as "we see now through a glass darkly" and "mysterious are the ways he chooses his wonders to perform" are mastered, logic can be happily tossed out the window. Religious mania is one of the few infallible ways of responding to the world's vagaries, because it totally eliminates pure accident. To the true religious maniac, it's all on purpose. It was quite likely for this reason that the trash can man talked to a crow for nearly 20 minutes on the road west of Vale. Convinced it was either an emissary of the dark man or the dark man himself, the crow regarded him silently from its perch on the high telephone wire for a long time, now flying away until it was bored or hungry, or until Trashman's outpouring of praise and promises of loyalty were complete. I'm about to send you guys back outside, because one of y'all got some nasty gas. He got another bike near Grand Junction, and by July 25th, the week after, he had been speeding across western Utah on Route 4. I don't know why they're so high up, which connects I-89 on the east to the great southwestern tending I-15, which goes from north of Salt Lake City all the way to San Bernardino, California. And when the front wheel of his bike suddenly decided to part company from the rest of the machine and go speeding off into the desert on its own, Trash Can Man was pitched over the handlebars to land on his head, a crash that should have fractured his skull 40 when it happened and wearing no helmet. Yet he was able to stand up less than 5 minutes later, with blood streaming over his face from half a dozen cuts and lacerations, able to do his shuffling, grimacing little dance, about to chant, "Chai a bowl of my life for you, chai a bowl of bumpity bumpity bump." There's really nothing so comforting to the beaten of spirit or the broken of skull than a good strong dose of "Thy will be done." On August 7th, Lloyd Henrid came to a room in which the dehydrated and semi-delirious trash can man had been installed the day before. It was a fine room on the 13th floor of the MGM Grand. There was a round bed with silk sheets and a round mirror which looked to be the same exact size as the bed mounted on the ceiling. Trash can man looked at Lloyd. "How you feeling, Trash?" Lloyd asked, looking back. Good, Trash can man said. Better. Some food and water and rest. That's all you need, Lloyd said. I brought you some clean clothes. Had to guess at the sizes. They look fine, Trash said. Trash had never really been able to remember his sizes. He took the jeans and the work shirt Lloyd offered. Come on down to breakfast when you're dressed, Lloyd said. He spoke almost differentially. Most of us eat in the deli. Okay, sure. The deli hummed with conversation, and he paused outside and around the corner, suddenly overcome with fright. Yes, I'm petting the dog. Why my hand's going weird. She's shooting right here. Right over here. Suddenly overcome with fright. They would look up at him when he came in. They would look up and laugh. Someone would start giggling in the back of the room. Someone else would join in. Then the whole place would be an uproar of laughter and pointing fingers. Hey, you put your matches. You put away your matches. Here comes the trash can man. Hey, Trash, what did old lady Semple say when you torched her pension check? Wet the bed much, Trashy? Sweat popped out of his skin, making him feel slimy in spite of the shower he'd taken after Lloyd left. He remembered his face in the bathroom mirror, covered with slowly healing scabs, his body too gaunt, his eyes too small for their yawning sockets. Yes, they would laugh. He listened to the hum of conversation, the the clink of silverware, and the thought he would just slip away. Then he thought of the way the wolf had taken his hand so gently and had led him away from the kid's metal tomb. And Trash squared his shoulders and walked inside. A few people looked up briefly and then went back to their meals and their conversation. Lloyd, at the big table in the middle of the room, raised his arm and waved him over. Trash threaded his way among the tables and under the darkened electronic Kino notebook or tote board. Kino tote board. There were three other people at the table. There were three other people at the table. They were all eating ham and scrambled eggs. Serve yourself, Lloyd said. It's a steam table kind of thing. Trash can man got a tray and served himself. The man behind the counter, large and dressed in a dirty cook's whites, watched him. Are you Mr. Horgan? Trash can man asked timidly. Horgan grinned, exposing his gaped teeth. Yeah, but we won't get nowhere if you callin' me that, boy. You call me Whitney. You feeling a little better? When you came in, you looked like the wrath of God. Much better, sure. Dig in those eggs. Dig in those eggs. All you want. Go light on the home fries, though. It well, I would at least. Go light on the home fries, though. I would at least. Them taters are old and tough. Good to have you here, boy. Thanks, Trash said. He went back to Lloyd's table. Trash, this here is Ken DeMont. A fellow with a bald spot is Hector Drogan. And this kid trying to grow on his face what springs up wild in his asshole calls himself Ace High. They all nodded at him. This is our new boy, Lloyd said. Name's Trash Can Man. Hands were shaking all around. Trash started to dig into his eggs. He looked up at the young man with the scrawny beard, said in a low, polite voice, Would you pass the salt, please, Mr. High? There was a moment of surprise as they looked at each other, and then they all burst into laughter. Trash stared at them, feeling the panic rise in his chest. And then he heard the laughter, really heard it, and his mind as well as his ears understood that there was no meanness in it. No one was going to ask him why he hadn't burned down the school instead of the church. No one here was going to dun him about old lady Semple's pension check. He could smile too if he wanted, and he did. Mr. High, Hector Drogan was giggling. Oh, Ace, you just been had, Mr. High. I love it. Mr. High. Man, that is so fucking rich. Ace High handed Trash Can the salt. Just Ace, my man. That'll get me every time. You don't call me Mr. High, and I won't call you Mr. Man. That a deal? Okay, Trash Can Man, that's fine. Oh, Mr. High, Heck Drogan said in a coy falsetto. Then he burst into laughter again. Ace, you're never going to live that down. I swear you won't. Maybe not, but I'm sure God gonna live it up. I'm sure God gonna live it up. Ace High said and got up with his plate for more eggs. His hand closed for a moment on the trash can man's shoulder as he went. The hand was warm and solid. It was a friendly hand that did not squeeze or pinch. Trash can man dug into his eggs, feeling warm and good inside. This warmth and goodness was so foreign to his nature that it almost felt like a disease. As he ate, he tried to isolate it, understand it. He looked up, looked at the faces around him, and thought he might understand what it was. Happiness. What a good bunch of people, he thought. And on the heels of it, I'm home. That day he was left on his own to sleep. The next day he was bussed up to the Boulder Dam with a lot of other people. They were spent the day wrapping core wire around the spindles of burned out motors. He worked at a bench with a view of the water, Lake Mead, and no one to supervise him. Trash Can Man assumed that there was no foreman or anyone like that around because everyone was in love with what they were doing, as he was himself. He learned differently the next day. At 10:15 in the morning, Trash Can Man was sitting on his bench, wrapping copper wire, his mind a million miles away as his fingers did their work. There's a piece of hair or something here. It's driving me nuts. Got it. Okay, that's better. As his fingers did their work, he was composing a psalm of praise to the dark man in his mind. It had occurred to him that he should get a book, actually, and begin to write some of his thoughts about him down. It would be the sort of book people might want to read someday, people who felt about him as Trash did. Ken DeMont came to his bench, and Ken looked pale and frightened under his desert tan. Come on, he said. Work's over. We're going back to Vegas. Everyone, the buses are out. Huh? Why? Trash Can blinked at him. Up at him. I don't know. It's his order. Lloyd passed it along. Get your ass in gear, Trashy. It's best not to question when the hard case is involved. So he didn't. Outside on Hoover Drive, 3 Las Vegas public school buses were parked, with their engines idling. Men and women were climbing aboard. There was little talk. The mid-morning ride back to Vegas was the antithesis of the usual commutes to and from work. There was no horseplay, little conversation, and none of the usual light banter that passed between the 20 or so women and the 30 or so men. Everyone had drawn into himself or herself. As they neared the city, Trash Can Man heard one of the men sitting across the aisle from him saying quietly to his seatmate, "It's Heck Drogan, goddammit. How does that spook find things out?" "Shut up," the other said, and gave Trash Can Man a mistrustful glance. Trash averted his gaze and looked out the window at the passing desert. He was once again troubled in his mind. "Oh, Jesus," one of the women said as they filed off the bus, but hers was the only comment. Trash Can looked around puzzled. Everyone was here, it looked like. Everyone in Chibola. They had all been called back, with the exception of a few scouts that might be anywhere from the Mexican Peninsula to the West Texas. They were gathered in a loose semicircle around the fountain, 6 or 7 deep, more than 400 in all. Some of those in the back were standing on hotel chairs so they could see, and until Trash Can drew closer, he thought it was the fountain they were looking at. Craning his neck, he could see there was something lying on the lawn in front of the fountain, and he couldn't see what it was. But he couldn't see what it was. A hand grasped his elbow. It was Lloyd. His face looked white and strained. I've been looking for you. He wants to see you later. Meantime, we got this. God, I hate this. Come on, I need help, and you're elected. Trash Can Man's head was whirling. He wanted to see me. He wanted to see him. But in the meantime, there was this, whatever this was. What, Lloyd? What is it? Lloyd didn't answer, still holding lightly the Trash Can Man's arm. He led him toward the fountain. The crowd parted before them, almost shrank from them. The narrow corridor they passed through seemed to be insulated with a still, cold layer of loathing and fear. Standing at the front of the crowd was Whitney Horgan. He was smoking a cigarette. One of his hush puppies was propped on the object Trash hadn't been quite able to make out before. It was a wooden cross. Its vertical piece was about 12 feet long. It looked like a crude capital T. Everyone here? Lloyd asked. Yeah, Whitney said. I guess they are. Winky took roll call. We got 9 guys out of state. Flagg said never mind about them. How about you? How are you holding up, Lloyd? I'll be fine, he said. Well, not fine, but I'll get through it. Whitney cocked his head towards Trash Can Man. How much does this kid know? I don't know anything, Trash Can said, more confused than ever. Hope, awe, and dread were all in dubious battle within him. What is this? Someone said something about Heck? Yeah, it's Heck, Lloyd said. He's been freebasing. Fucking blow. Don't I hate the goddamn fucking blow. Go on, Whitney. Tell him to bring him out. Whitney moved away from Lloyd and Trash, stepped over the rectangle hole in the ground. The hole had been trotted with cement. It looked just the right size and depth to take the butt end of the cross. As Horgan trotted up the wide stairs between the gold pyramids, Trash Can Man felt all the spit in his mouth dry up. He suddenly turned, first to the silent crowd, waiting in the crescent formation under the blue sky, then to Lloyd, who stood pale and silent, looking at the cross, and picking the white head of a pimple on his chin. We nail him up? Trash Can managed at last. Is that what this is about? Lloyd reached suddenly into the pocket of his faded shirt. I got something for you. He gave it to me to give to you. I can't make you take it, but it's a goddamn good thing for me that I remembered to at least make the offer. Do you want it? From his breast pocket, he drew a fine gold chain with a black jet stone on the end of it. The stone was flawed, tiny red spot, as was Lloyd's own. He dangled it before Trash Can Man's eyes like a hypnotist's amulet. The truth was in Lloyd's eyes, too clear not to recognize it. Trash Can knew he could never weep or grovel. Not before him. Not before anybody. But especially not before him. And claim he hadn't understood. Take this and you take everything, Lloyd's eyes said. And what's a part of everything? Hey, why, Dick Drogan, of course. Heck in the cement-lined hole in the ground. The hole was just big enough to take the butt of Heck's cross tree. He reached for it slowly. His hand paused just before the outreached fingers could touch the gold chain. This is my last chance. My last chance to be Donald Merwin Elbert. But another voice, one which spoke with greater authority, but with a certain gentleness, like a cool hand on a fevered brow, told him that the time of choices had long passed since. If he chose to be Donald Merwin Elbert now, he would die. He had sought the dark man of his own free will, if there is such thing as the Trash Can Man of the world, if such a thing for the Trash Can men of the world, and accepted the dark man's favors. The dark man had saved him from dying at the hands of the kid. That the dark man might have sent the kid for just that purpose never crossed Trash Can Man's mind. And surely That meant his life was now a debt he owed to that same dark man. The man, some of them are called the walking dude. Some of them here called the walking dude. His life. Had he not himself offered it again and again? But your soul, did you offer your soul as well? In for a penny, in for a pound, Trash Can Man thought, and gently put one hand around the gold chain and the other around the dark stone. The stone was cold and smooth. He held it in his fist for a moment just to see if he could warm it up. He didn't think he would be able to, and he was right. So he put it around his neck, where it lay against the skin like a tiny ball of ice. But he didn't mind that icy feeling. That icy feeling counterbalanced the fire, which was always in his mind. Just tell yourself you don't know him, Lloyd said. Heck, that's what I always do. Makes it easier. Two of the wide hotel doors banged open. Frantic, terrified screams floated across to them, and the crowd sighed. A party of 9 came down the steps. Hector Drogan was in the center. He was fighting like a tiger caught in a net. His face was dead pale except for 2 hectic blots of color riding high up on his cheeks. Sweat was pouring off every inch of his skin in rivers. He was mother naked. 5 men were holding on to him. One of them was ace high. The kid Heck had been ribbing about his name. Ace, Hector was babbling. Hey, Ace, what do you say? Little help for the kid, huh? Okay? Tell them to quit this, man. I can get clean. I swear to God I can clean up my act. What do you say? Little help here, please, Ace. Ace High said nothing, simply tightened his grip on Heck's thrashing arm. It was answer enough. Hector Drogan began to scream again. He was dragged relentlessly across the pavilion and toward the fountain. Behind him, walked in line like a solemn undertaker's party, were 3 men. Whitney Horgan, carrying a large carpet bag, a man named Roy Hoops, with a stepladder, and Winky Winks, a bald man whose eyes twitched constantly. Winky was carrying a clipboard with a typed sheet of paper on it. Heck was dragged to the foot of the cross. A horrible yellow smell, fear, was radiating out of him. Did it say of fear? Yeah. His eyes rolled, showing the muddy whites, like the eyes of a horse left out in a thunderstorm. Hey, Trashy, he said hoarsely as Ray Hoops a stepladder behind him. Trash Can Man, tell him to cut it out, buddy. Tell him I can get clean. Tell him a scare like this is better than all the fucking rehabs in the world. Tell him, man. Trash Can stared down at his feet. As he bent his neck, the black stone swung away from his chest and into his field of vision. The red flaw, the eye, seemed to be staring at him fixedly. I don't know you, he mumbled. From the tail of his eye, he saw Whitney down on one knee, a cigarette dangling from the corner of his mouth. His left eye squinted against the smoke. He opened the carpet bag. He was taking out sharp wooden nails. The Trash Can Man's horrified gaze. They looked almost as big as tent pegs, and they were. They are. He laid the nails on the grass, and then removed a large wooden mallet from the carpet bag. In spite of the murmuring voices all around them, Trash Can Man's words seems to have penetrated the panicky haze in Hector Drogan's mind. What do you mean you don't know me? He cried wildly. We had breakfast together just 2 days ago. You called the kid here Ace High. What do you mean you don't know me, you chicken shit little liar? I don't know you at all, Trash repeated, a little more clearly this time. But what he felt was almost a sense of relief. All he saw here in front of him was a stranger who looked a bit like Carly Yates. His hand went to the stone and curled around it. Its coolness reassured him further. You liar! Heck screamed. He began to struggle again, his muscles flexing and pumping. The sweat trickled down his bare chest and arms. You liar! You do so know me! You do so, you liar! No, I don't. I don't know you, and I don't want to know you. Heck began to scream again. The four men holding him bore down, panting and out of breath. Go ahead, Lloyd said. Heck was dragged backwards. One of the men holding him stuck out a leg and tripped him. He landed half on the cross and half off it. Meanwhile, Winky had begun to read the typed sheet on the clipboard in a high voice that sliced through Heck's screams like the howl of a buzzsaw. Attention, attention, attention! By the order of Randall Flagg, leader of the people and first citizen, this man, Hector Alonzo Drogan, by name, is ordered executed by the act of crucifixion, this penalty so ordered for the crime of drug use. No, no, no! Heck screamed in frenzied counterpoint. His left arm, greasy with sweat, escaped Ace High's hold, and instinctively Trash knelt and pinned the arm back down, forcing the wrist against the arm of the cross. A second later, Whitney was kneeling beside Trash Can with a wooden mallet and two of the crude nails. The cigarette still hung from the corner of his mouth. He looked like a man about to do a little job of carpeting in his backyard. Yeah, good. Hold him just like that, Trash. I'll staple him. Won't take a minute. Drug use is not allowed in this society of the people because it impairs the user's ability to contribute fully to the society of the people, Winky was proclaiming. He spoke fast, like an auctioneer, and his eyes bunched and scrunched and wiggled. Specifically in the use, the accused Hector Drogan was found with freebasing paraphernalia and a large supply of cocaine. Now Heck's screams had reached a pitch that might well have shattered crystal, if there had been any crystal around to shatter. His head lashed from side to side. There was foam on his lips. Ribbons of blood coursed down his arms as 6 of them, Trash Can Man included, lifted the cross into the cement pit. Now Hector Drogan was silhouetted against the sky, with his head drawn back in a rictus of pain. Is done for the good of this society of the people, Winky screamed relentlessly. This communication ends with a solemn warning and greetings to the people of Las Vegas. Let this bill of true facts be nailed above the miscreant's head, and let it be marked with the seal of the first citizen, Randall Flagg, by name. Oh my God, it hurts! Hector Drogan screamed from above them. Oh my God, oh God, oh my God, oh God, God, God. The crowd remained for almost an hour, each person afraid to be remarked upon as having been the first to leave. There was disgust on many faces, a drowsy kind of excitement on many others, but if there was a common denominator, it was fear. Trash Can Man wasn't frightened, though. Why should he have been frightened? He hadn't known the man at all. He hadn't known him at all. It was 10:15 that night when Lloyd came back to Trash Can Man's room. He glanced at Trash and said, You're dressed. Good. I thought you might have gone to bed already. No, Trash Can Man said. I'm up. Why? Lloyd's voice dropped. It's now, Trashy. He wants to see you. Flag. He? Yeah. Trash Can was transported. Where is he? My life for him. Oh, yes. Top floor, Lloyd said. He got in just after we finished burning Drogan's body from the coast. He was just here when Whitney and I got back from the landfill. No one ever sees him come and go, Trash. But they always know when he's taken off again, or when he comes back. Come on, let's go. 4 minutes later, the elevator arrived at the top floor. The Trash Can Man, his face alight and his eyes googling, stepped out. Lloyd did not. Trash turned toward him. Aren't you? Lloyd managed to smile, but it was a sorry affair. No, he wants to see you alone. Good luck, Trash. And before he could say anything else, the elevator door had slid shut and Lloyd was gone. Trash Can turned around. He was in a wide, sumptuous hallway There were 2 doors, and the one at the end was slowly opening. It was dark in there. Trash could see a form standing in the doorway, and eyes, red eyes. Heart thudding slowly in his chest, mouth dry. Trash can man started to walk toward that form, and as he did, the air seemed to grow steadily cooler and cooler. Goosebumps rushed out on his sun-baked arms. Somewhere deep inside him, the corpse of Donald Merwin Albert rolled over in its grave and seemed to cry out. Then it was still again. "The trash can man," a low and charming voice said. "How good it is to have you here. How very good." The words felt like dust from his mouth. My life for you. Yes, the shape in the doorway said soothingly. Lips parted and white teeth showed in a grin. "But I don't think it will come to that. Come on, let me look at you." His eyes over bright, his face as slack as the face of a sleepwalker. Trash can man stepped inside. The door closed, and they were in dimness. A terribly hot hand closed over Trash can man's icy one. Suddenly, he felt at peace. Flagg said, "There's work for you in the desert, Trash. Great work, if you want it." "Anything," Trash can man whispered. "Anything." Randall Flagg slipped an arm around his wasted shoulders. "I'm going to set you to burn," he said. "Come, let's have something to drink and talk about it." And in the end, that burning was very great. And that is where we're going to stop, and we will start 49 tomorrow night. I think this one was really good. Trash can is not one that we hear about often. We've been talking about, we've been reading about Stu's group, and we haven't talked about Larry's group in a while. They're Abigail, they're on their way to Colorado. And so everybody's heading west. That's what the whole theme is so far everybody's heading west. And now it's, what do we do? What's going to happen? We've got to find out. You know what I mean? So I think this is a really awesome, really awesome story so far. I'm not sure what you guys think, but I do love it. So I hope y'all do too. I'm going to let you go. My hubs will be home soon. I'm going to spend some time with them. So y'all have a good night. Remember to follow if you haven't. I will see you soon. Love you all.